and live from the internet, it's ZN Live. I'm very excited today. We have a fantastic guest, Antonio Nieto-Rodriguez, who is the described world champion of project management. He's got an extensive experience in all things related to projects for over 20 years, working with multinationals, writing books, doing online courses, as well as advising a number of people. Hi, Lior, great to see you. So, Antonio, I want to ask you the first question, because everybody, of course, has been affected by remote working, the pandemic. How was that for you, and how is it transforming project management?
Thank you, Phil. A pleasure to be here with you. We know each other for, I think, almost 15 years. So great to be in your show. Well, I think what the pandemic has done has put projects in the center of every business, which is great. We've been trying to do that for 20 years, and suddenly it happened because a need, an urgency to really prioritize and get everybody around projects to get businesses alive and survive and go through this massive crisis. So I think from a project perspective, people have understood that if you want to become digital, you need a project and you need to focus on it, and you need to put best people on that, resources and senior management attention. The development of the COVID vaccine was a massive project that happened in 10 months, in 10 years. So I think from a project management perspective, has been a very exciting time, because things that we've been preaching suddenly happening. And the other thing, Phil, is that we all have become a bit of project managers, right? Working remotely, we need to manage our time. We need to work with people across the world. And so we sort of accelerated that. I always say we are all project managers in our lives. That pandemic has accelerated everything. And you can see that we all feel more managing projects as before. So great timing for the profession I'm passionate about.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. We are all indeed project managers. We're always doing different projects, whether they're big, small, regardless of what you're doing. And I really like your focus on this area. Now, what do you think the impact of remote working? Because of course, a lot of companies have gone remote. Do you think this makes project management easier or more difficult?
Well, there's a fact that comes across in very successful projects is building trust. So you need to trust people. You need to know that when people are not working face to face, they're working on your project. So I think the challenge of all this is how do we build trust with people that we don't see really, we just see in screens. So that makes it much more difficult, right, to manage projects. There's the positive side is that projects in this hybrid world, it's just very flat, right? We can have a sponsor and the teams all in the same screen, and there's no hierarchy, and we can all work as a team. So the challenging part is the building of the trust. How can I build that trust fast without connecting to people? And that's a human thing that we all have, that we need to kind of really see the people and connect with them, not just work-wise, but some other type of connections. And that's the challenge I see, Phil, with these new ways of working.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. I think you're right. Trust is obviously critical. And we have, by the way, Daniel saying, hello, everybody. Happy Friday. So nice to go to have a guest talking about project management. And Leora saying, I love your enthusiasm for project management. What are some key tips and principles we should all adopt? Now, I want to go back to this in relation to what you just said. So I believe you're right. Trust is critical. Now, it is also critical in an office. I don't think that physical presence somehow makes people trustworthy. I think, I've experienced a lot of offices where there was very low trust. And in fact, you can have networks which work together on the basis of output. And at ZN, actually, we've gone full remote for the last 2 years. We still have an office, but the core of our work is happening in this network. And I find that it really allows us to be much more focused on outcomes. We're not interested in how many hours people are working. We're interested in what the output is. But I believe that trust is critical. So how would you say, to answer perhaps Leora's question, what do you do to build trust
Mhm.
in general and in a remote environment. And hi, Gaia, who says trust is the key to have a star team.
Hi, Gaia. Great questions here, by the way, Phil, in your audience. Well, basically, building trust is something that you need to do and dedicate time. So, at the beginning of the project, I always say just meet together online and just have chats and say what your hobbies are and what your career, your failures, your successes. So, try to connect the people outside work. And I think that's one of the good things that you can just ping people and say, hey, you have 5 minutes for a quick chat and connect and what you say I like, because it's building those networks that will help you drive those projects. So that's kind of the main tip. Let people play around at the beginning to just get to know each other. Have meetings without agenda. Have meetings a bit like icebreakers, where people tell more about themselves, who they are, rather than what they're doing in the company, and that will start building some trust that we need for executing those projects. So just don't ignore that these are important elements in any project. Building that trust is intangible. It's hard to measure. Let's dedicate 1 hour per week on building trust. That doesn't work like that. So let the people explore and make it a fluid environment where people can chat whenever they want and become, you want them maybe friends and colleagues, right? They can do that as well while they're working on your project.
Yeah, and Justin says all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. So I think maybe linking to your point, it's true that we have to combine, formal communication on projects with informal communication. I find that chats are actually a very good way to kind of, share some comments, some memes, some emojis in between things. But of course, I think it's really important to set the framework, and I think discussing the culture of your network and your organization is a big part of it. I think what Daniel just said about the importance of the project leader is also very important, because obviously if that person is able to set the tone, and I think it's about having leaders who have integrity, who commit to something and deliver on what they commit. But in my experience, when you have a good team and you have trust, I find that remote work actually is more efficient than traditional office work. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think, because a lot of people, especially in Brussels, are desperate to go back to the office, are desperate to not be remote, especially the senior leadership. What would you tell them?
Well, I think back to the first question, Phil, what we've seen when companies had to adapt to the pandemic very quickly. I've seen business schools that have been talking about online teaching and online schooling for 10, 15 years, and suddenly they did it in a week. People working remotely, right? And it happened. The vaccine as well, it happened working people remotely across the world, and we got vaccines for the COVID. So I completely agree. It's a great point, Phil, that we should not forget remembering or reminding senior leaders that yes, you want to monitor your people in the office, but don't forget that we have really make amazing progress working remotely. That would have never happened working in office space. Never. We would have never found the vaccine in 10 months. Never. Business schools that have been working face to face never become kind of virtual schools in a week. So I think this is a great point that you make, Phil. We need to remind these leaders that they are going to lose something when they bring everybody back on the office. I think a big loss for sure.
Yeah, and I think especially if they do it for the wrong reasons. A lot of the time they're saying, I want you to come back, not because they think it's better, but because they feel that they have more control over their workers by seeing if they're, physically sitting in front of their computer, which for me has always been an absurd idea. You're not productive just because you're sitting doing long hours. And I also think that, as Sean just said, it's about focus on outcomes, not on hierarchy and personalities. And I think the more companies are really pushing going back to physical spaces, it's the more hierarchical, traditional, and insecure leaders who say, I don't believe that people are working if I'm not there. Now, I would say on the other side that I think you need physical contact. You need to meet people. You want to have lunch, you want to have a drink, you want to have coffee. Now, all these things you can do, and that's what I'm telling the teams, like you should meet each other, but it doesn't have to be in an office where you're sitting in front of your computer, and you can, of course, use the office for that. So I think you need those two connections, but they can be thought in a very, very different way. Now, one of the things I really liked about your work is having kind of created that template, the project canvas.
Mhm.
And I think that's a really nice idea, and we do a lot of work on projects, of course, but often you do projects without fully thinking about how to do it. So tell us a
Mhm.
little bit about how you came up with the idea of the project canvas, and why everybody should check it out, and we're going to link it below.
Sure, and I can share the PDF version or the
Yeah.
PowerPoint version. It's something, but basically, I've been working in project management for 25 years, and also business world. I like theories, and so I realized that the most simple theories around business and leadership are super simple. You have 5 forces from Michael Porter. You have the 7 Ps of marketing from Kotler, the Agile Manifesto, business model canvas. They're just one pagers, and it doesn't solve all the problems, but it gets the people around, and everybody can contribute, and you get alignment, and you can make some kind of pre-decision. So they're very useful tools to just think about strategy, market. But I realized that in the world of projects, there's nothing simple. There was nothing simple. You have project charters, which are 40 pages. You have status report, which has 20 pages. So there's nothing simple. And I thought I need to change that. I got inspired by the business model canvas. I know Alex Osterwald and Ipignon, and kind of talking to them, I realized there's an opportunity to simplify projects as well. So I created this canvas, which is just a tool to get people around the table in your projects, look at all these 14 elements and see, do we have all the elements right to launch this project? Are we doing right on this project, or do we miss some areas that we need to focus and solve? So it's just so simple. In 1 hour, you can learn the fundamentals of a project. You can apply it straight away with your project and your team, and then you can see whether your project is a mess or not, or you're doing right. So that's kind of the intention. It's not substituting many of the techniques in project management at all, but it's just making it simple for everybody and bringing a tool that anybody can use. That's it.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea, and I think when I was looking at it, I was thinking it's basically, I like to think in terms of checklists, and
Uh-huh.
the idea of saying, hey, here are all the different things that we might want to consider, and have that oversight. And I think you need to probably adapt that to different
Mhm.
projects, the small ones, the big ones, the medium ones.
Exactly.
But I think it's a great way of framing things. We also have a comment from Remco Timmermans, who's our space influencer. How does project management support software in combination with work from home help make things more efficient? And I think it's a very interesting point, because we, in making the switch to fully remote,
Mhm.
we spend a lot of time working on systems. We actually built from Teams, SharePoint, Dynamics, a kind of infrastructure to really allow people to be onboarded, etc. What's your reading on what's needed for project management tools and work from
Well,
home?
Remco and Daniel, I think you were talking about Trello, about Slack, Monday, Smartsheet. I love these tools. I think they are really what we need to have in place. Like you're saying, Philippe, like you're creating that infrastructure for allowing people to communicate, to follow up on to-do lists, having a Kanban board on your project. And I think we just seen the beginning of all these tools. That are very much focused on communication and progress and workflow. But my wish, and I'm doing some investigation, a bit of investment in some startups, is that many of these tools will become like AI, then do many of this work for us, right? And at least in projects and project management, there's still a lot of admin work. There's a lot of chasing for data. There's a lot of time spent in making reports and night flip charts and KPIs. And I just can't wait that we get machines doing that admin work, and then we can focus more on the change, on the outcomes, like you were talking, Philippe, on managing the stakeholders. So I think these tools are absolutely needed to
Yeah.
just be simple. The Slack and the Trello, they're they're good, they're modern, they're easy to use. Slack, it just I definitely a must do if you want to work projects in this hybrid mode.
Yeah, my experience has been that we have great tools. A lot of companies, a lot of organizations are equipped, in fact, with pretty sophisticated tools. But I think the big challenge is to make use of the tools intelligently. And for that, actually, you need a certain amount of training, a certain amount of structure in the organization to say, okay, how are we going to use this tool? What are the basic rules of engagement? Because I've met organizations that, have the whole Microsoft thing and don't know how to use it at all. So I think it's important not to underestimate the amount of training and change management that you need in order to get your team and your network to be using tools with the same understanding and the same language.
Absolutely. I think that's one of the challenges of all the tools. They say we use 5%, 10%,
Yeah.
and then that it's just very hard to overcome. So I think tools are needed, but I think what makes a great project is the project leadership, is the team, is that having a higher purpose for your project. There are more software elements and some techniques that drive project success, but the tool absolutely it's an enabler, right?
Absolutely. Now we're gonna have a few recommendations, which includes some of your online courses and latest books. So we can cue jingle for the recommendation, if we have. What a fantastic jingle! Thank you, Daniel, for doing.
Nice.
I think we just had it twice. Excellent.
Yeah.
So we have twice to make. So do you have any recommendations for our viewers before we jump into your latest book?
Well, I'm a big fan of a guy called Marshall Goldsmith. He's like a great person. I know him personally, but everything what he writes, it's about developing yourself. It's about coaching and getting better, not just financially, but being a good leader, be a better person. And he just launched a book called The Earned Life, and I just love it. Lots of examples. He has met and coached most of the brilliant CEOs around the world, which I had the pleasure to meet Alan Mulally, CEO of Ford. And so I think that person, Marshall Goldsmith, and his work, his latest book, is something that I always recommend, because it's not just leadership. It's not about strategy or entrepreneur. It's more about how can we become better leaders and better persons. So I like that.
Excellent. Do you have a title? Do you have a title?
The Earned Life. The Earned Life is
The Earned Life. Excellent.
Latest book of Marshall Goldsmith.
Okay, so and I of course have to recommend your latest book from the Harvard Business Review, the Project Handbook. So tell us what's in that book and why does everybody need to read it?
Well, interesting story. I just was a dream for me to get Harvard publishing on project management. They usually don't publish. They don't like the topic project management. It's a boring topic. It's not exciting, not sexy. So I managed to convince them. I think basically the main point is that we need to, everybody is now basically working in projects, and senior leaders as well, and they don't have the competencies. They've not been trained. So working with HBR, we try to work in this book where we make project management simple. So first, we need to simplify. We need to refresh it. And it's embracing Agile. Why would not you want to use Agile concepts in your projects? Yes, we need that. We need a bit of planning and waterfalling as well. But it's this hybrid approach to projects. And then make it simple, make it refresh and easy to use. And second, let's ensure that senior leaders also understand what their role is and how can they support projects. And to my surprise, Phil, and to their surprise, they were not having big expectations about their first book on project management. It has really broken many records because I think, HBR brings a kind of serious net brand and realize that many people were struggling with their projects. So I'm very, very happy about that.
Yeah, it's a fantastic idea. And by the way, if you go to your website, you can download the first chapter for free.
Yeah.
So I would encourage everyone to do that. We just dropped the link here. But another way to learn from your book is actually to follow your courses on LinkedIn Learning. So I see you've published several courses. And in fact, I was watching one of them recently. And, for me, we've been applying Agile actually for the last 2 years in using it for our development. But we also have a version of Agile for communication. So we call this Agile communication, where you have cycles on a communication campaign and you use that same methodology. So how have you got, what kind of experience did you get from your LinkedIn? How has it been for you, and how much can people get out of these courses in your experience?
Well, I think it's an easy way to learn the basics very quickly. These are courses of an hour that you can follow. You can interact with me as well. If you have any questions, you just type it, I'll reply, and then you get a mini credential. I don't think that's really the added value, but some people like that. But it's just, I just try to share the key concepts. It's not going to solve like a full day of training. It's not going to cover the whole book, but if you're just looking for the essence on the project canvas, or how we should look at project management today in a refreshed way, reinvented, that you'll get that in just in an hour. You will be able to talk differently, to understand your projects differently, to manage your projects with your team differently. So it's very practical, it's hands-on, full of examples, and some of the templates are there. So if you are interested in finding, I think that would be the first step, and then you can opt for the book or something more advanced. But that's a solid basis that you can get. And congratulations, Phil, I saw you pass and you got the certificate of my course.
Thank you. I was so excited.
Yeah, so
Yeah, and actually Daniel's recommendation, which he just
it's
put
a
in
good
the
one.
chat, is High Output Management
Yeah,
from Andy Grove. Fantastic book.
very
I've
good.
actually stayed with the one metaphor of the boiled egg, which I use all the time. You know, in whatever your project is, define what the boiled egg is and build everything around it, because once you set the water for boiling, you have to find your boiled egg. So great tip. I'm going to make one recommendation this week, which is Startup Forever, from Zahar Hashemi, who's the founder of Coffee Republic. She wrote a first book called Anyone Can Do It. And this is a more recent book for basically large corporations who try to keep that startup mindset. It's a very interesting book, quite some very practical advice. And she was on a panel with me with a large pharma company. And this idea of saying you can have a startup culture in a big company, in a mature company, which for me is very important, because I want to make sure that we retain the startup and entrepreneurial culture in ZN, although we're kind of an old company, but we still have that startup mindset. So Antonio, maybe what would be your kind of recommendation to leaders? A lot of our viewers are in communication, but what would be your kind of top tips for them to better manage project in this new remote or hybrid world?
Maybe two quick ones, Phil. That's easy. First, don't talk too much about the what the project will deliver. Right? It's not about a new website. It's not about a new software, new campaign. We need to talk more about the why. Why do we create this platform? Why do we launch this campaign? And make it aspirational, inspirational. Right? A small sample HR tool. Why do we want an HR tool? Basically, we want that to engage more or people, make them happy. So talk about the project making our staff more happy, not the HR tool. So I think the way we talk about projects and focusing so much on the deliverable instead of the purpose, why do we do it? That's why people want to work for it. And the second small tip is that we usually appoint people to work in projects. About 90% of the people in a project, including the project manager, are appointed by senior leaders or management. Hey, you'll work on that project as from tomorrow, and nobody checks with you if you are interested, if you have time. So the most engaged people in a project are volunteers. So before you launch a new project, say who wants to volunteer. And if nobody wants to volunteer, don't launch the project. Probably it's crap. So you cannot have all volunteers, of course, but it's just see if it's the project and you communicate it excitingly with the purpose, people will want to work on that, and that's where you already have immediate engagement from the workforce. So it's a just small change, but ask for volunteers and you'll see a huge difference.
Yeah, and I think especially when we're talking about projects where it's not fully defined, a lot of the projects that we work on, you need to take initiative, you need to change as you move forward. So you want people who are going to be proactive. And this is something that I really look for when we create projects, is to find people who have the skills and the motivation. So, you want them to be, sufficiently interested, but also you don't want what I call role pollution, which is people who are taking a project and they don't really, they're not the right people, but they just feel they have to do it. And it's a constant balance, because I think those people with motivations are the ones who are going to solve the problems. They're the ones who are going to say, you know what, this doesn't make sense. And you know, when you talked about the why, I think about this idea of commander's intent, which is actually a NATO strategy, which is you don't know how the mission is going to unfold, but you need to tell people this is what we're trying to achieve, and you need to then change the implementation based on the reality on the ground. So, but it's been fantastic having you. Some very, very powerful insights, some great material and links to share. But I think that's all we have time for today. But people can, of course, watch your courses, your videos, and all the rest of the material, and learn to become better project managers. So thank you so much, Antonio. Have a fantastic weekend, and we will stay in touch and see you online.
Thank you. Hasta la vista.